Fab, yeah. So, like Caroline said, I'm a video producer and I run a company called Studio 91 Media. We're based in Manchester. I've just moved down to Cheadle Hulme in Stockport. I've been running this company since 2018, 2019, and I want to basically talk a little bit about how I got to where I am, so my kind of career journey so far, but also a little bit about the kind of freelance life, the entrepreneur life, and some of the sort of pros and cons of that, and also some tips for getting into media jobs really, but it's going to apply to kind of any of these sort of creative roles that we've been talking about today. Cool, next one please. Yeah, so I started life as a runner. That's me wearing my Blue Peter badge, which I'm very proud of, because I used to work for the BBC, and most of my kind of BBC career was spent at Blue Peter. But you generally find in sort of TV and film companies, usually the runner jobs are the place where you start, and that could be any sort of fetching, carrying, any odd jobs. Sometimes it's just about making teas and coffees. It's about kind of doing the dirty work and doing the legwork and basically doing the stuff that the higher ups don't really want to do a lot of the time. So it is always fun because of the environment you're working in and because of the energy of it, but it's not always the most interesting creative stuff. From there, I went into a production management assistant role. That's what the BBC calls it. In other places, it's sometimes called a production secretary. But again, it's a lot of odd jobs. It's a lot of sort of admin stuff and supporting the production manager in managing any projects, any people, and kind of keeping the team run smoothly. When I was doing that, though, I was always on the lookout for little creative tasks that I could do on the side. So what I tended to do was get all of my kind of admin work done well, but done quickly, and then going, I've got a bit of free time. Is it all right if I do this little Photoshop job or do this little video edit? I'd like try and put myself in those positions where I was doing something more creative. And because I'd done that, it gave me the experience that when I was able to interview for a researcher job, I kind of already had this creative experience in my belt. Under my belt, so I was able to say, look, I can do all this stuff. I can do it was at that point it was a job for the CBBC website, so creating content for that, and it was a lot of Photoshop jobs, a lot of video editing, and I'd been doing all that. I'd been proving that I was able to do it. So when I went into the interview for that researcher job, I kind of had the proof that I could do it. The next step from that was still at the BBC, still on the CBBC website, but it was called assistant content producer, and that was really where I was starting to get a bit more responsibility, where they kind of trusted me to go and do a film shoot on my own, and to direct people, and to be kind of managing other people as well. But that's kind of where my BBC career, I guess, stopped, or at least paused, because I decided to leave at that point. And it's mad because by the time I was working on Blue Peter as an assistant content producer, that was my dream job. That was kind of all I could have wanted. I was able to meet loads of really interesting people. I worked with film stars and pop stars and sports personalities, all this sort of stuff, and I loved it. But it got to the point where I'd kind of plateaued a little bit. I sort of learned everything that I could learn in that role. I'd got as far as I wanted to go, and if I'd kept going any further at the BBC, what would have happened most likely is it would have been more management roles and less of the sort of creative hands-on work that I wanted to do. So the solution for me was to become a business owner. It was to leave all that BBC corporate employee life behind and do my own thing as a freelance video producer. And yeah, that kind of came with its own I guess risks. It was a little bit crazy because the point when I left the BBC, I was married and I had a 3-month-old son, so it was like a weird time to be leaving the security of a regular employed job and kind of going out in the world on my own, where I've got to kind of find all this business myself. But it was absolutely the right decision for me, because I knew all along that I wanted to build something for myself. I didn't necessarily want to be told what to do all the time. I wanted to go and find work, pick and choose projects, and work flexibly in my own way. Which kind of brings me to the next bit, which is just some of the pros and cons of being a freelancer or being an entrepreneur. Because the main pro, the main thing that I wanted out of freelance life was being my own boss. You do get to kind of pick and choose projects. You get to decide when you work. You know, if I want to take a day off, I can kind of just take it. I don't really have to answer to anyone. The flip side of that is that you're not just your own boss. You've actually got loads of bosses. And so at any given time, I might be working on 7 or 8 different projects, all for different clients. And each of those individual clients doesn't know what I'm doing for everyone else. So they just think, oh, Ben's working on his edit for us, so I can bug him about that all day. And they might ring me about it, they might email me about it, when actually I'm busy with something else. Whereas when you're in an employed job, you've got one manager usually, and they tend to know pretty much exactly what you're doing. They know what your workload is. You might be busy, yeah, but they know kind of when they might have given you too much work. If you're a freelancer or you're an entrepreneur, you've usually got tons of clients and they all want a piece of you all the time. The other thing that's great about being freelance is the flexibility that it gives you. So yeah, like I said, I can pick and choose things. I can choose when I work. Maybe one day I want to start really early and get everything done by lunchtime and take the afternoon off. I can kind of make those decisions myself. There's less security with it as well. That's another con. Yeah, there's no kind of guarantees that I'll be able to pay my salary every month. You know, how am I going to make sure that I can pay my rent? Well, part of that is down to when I have a good month and I've got more money than normal, I don't just go and spend it all on a new camera or something. I've got to keep some of that aside and think about, okay, well, what if next month or the next couple of months aren't so good? I'm going to need to have a little bit of a buffer to make sure I can pay myself, but also, you know, I'm about to take on a full-time staff member. I use freelancers all the time. I've got to make sure that I've got the cash in the bank to pay them even before I get to pay myself. Yeah, and the other thing is you get bigger rewards. So the way that money works in the freelance world is people tend to pay you more as like a day rate than you would if you're in a regular job. That's just because if one of my clients wants some video content making, they could hire a full-time video producer, but that's going to cost them loads of money, or they can hire me for 2 or 3 days. So I'm getting more as a day rate, but they're actually saving money because they're using a freelancer. But yeah, along with those bigger rewards, you've got bigger risks because you can't guarantee that you're going to have the amount of work that you need each month to pay your bills. So there's all these kind of pros and cons, all these flip sides to it. It really suits some people, this kind of entrepreneur life. It really doesn't suit some other people. But yeah, for me, it's amazing. I know for a lot of people, it's how they want to live. Can I have the next slide then, Caroline? Because the other thing I just wanted to touch on was just some tips for if you want to get into these sort of creative jobs, whether it's, you know, working for someone like the BBC or another broadcaster like that, or whether it's being a freelancer. And these, yeah, they're kind of mainly focused on media, but really any of these creative roles that we've been talking about, I think these would apply. So the first of those is to build up your own portfolio. And by that, what I mean is do work off your own bat. So if you're going for an interview at somewhere like the BBC, or if you're trying to win a freelance client, the first thing they're going to want to know is what have you done already? And there's this weird vicious cycle with creative careers where, well, I guess any career, where the person interviewing you wants to know what experience you've got, but to get that experience in the first place, you've got to surely get a job. You don't have to. Like, when it comes to creative stuff, there's so much you can do on your own. If you can go into a BBC interview and they say, what experience have you got? And you say, oh, well, actually, I run a YouTube channel and we've got X hundred subscribers. And, you know, I put out 1 or 2 videos a week about this and that. I do all the filming, all the editing, all the presenting, all the graphics and branding, and I direct it all. They're going to be so impressed. And you've not had to you know, apply for a job to do that. That's just a choice you've made to kind of put that in action. You might not have the skills or resources to be filming and editing and that kind of thing, but maybe there's something else you could do. Maybe you could write, you could have a blog, for example. A podcast might be something you could do if you've just got a phone. You know, there's tons of things you could do, but what an interviewer is going to be looking for is what have you done? What initiative have you shown? What creativity have you shown? The second tip would just be to have ideas. So even if you're in, you know, when I was in that production management assistant job at the BBC, my actual job was to do admin. It was like spreadsheets and phone calls and meetings and that kind of thing. But I still have the confidence to suggest ideas, to say, what if we did this differently? You know, here's a new thing we could do. This thing's a massive trend at the moment. Can we jump on that and do something with that? If you can have the confidence to just kind of speak up and bring those ideas to the table, that always really impresses people. And then the third thing would just be to expect to start at the bottom. I've seen quite a lot of times when I was at the BBC, we'd get someone who was on a work experience placement, which is something that you can do really easily. Well, it's not easy to do it, but if you go on the BBC Careers website, there's always lots of placements on there. But sometimes the people doing those placements would kind of expect that they could be in charge, like maybe they've done a uni degree in film production, and they just think that they knew everything about it. But that's kind of not what people want from you when you're just starting out in your career. What you need to do is just be available. It's just to kind of almost sort of take whatever jobs you can get. As David kind of mentioned before, sometimes in creative jobs you end up doing you tend to start doing not necessarily the job that you want to do. That's kind of okay, as long as you've got that end goal in mind, you know where you're headed. My advice would just be to kind of work at wherever you are, and to just raise your hand whenever it's appropriate to do so and say, look, I've got an idea. What if we did this differently? And just to demonstrate that you can do your job well, but also you've got something else to bring. So yeah, that's it from me. But if you've got any questions or you want any advice or anything, feel free to just get in touch through Caroline, or I'm on LinkedIn as Ben Horrigan, so you can find me on there.